Welcome to Connect Me, your Informa Connect virtual event experience. Simply log in with the unique password sent from us. After this, build your badge, take or upload your photo, and write a little bit about yourself. Before your event starts, you can add contacts, make connections, and look for new business opportunities in the expo. Take control and curate your event experience. Build your own personal agenda by adding the session most relevant to you. For organized networking, set your availability and pre-arrange your meetings to make the most of your time. During your event, watch content live in the various stages and streams. Take part in interactive polling, live Q&A, and download content directly to your delegate bag. Check out the workshops and roundtables using the self-serve presentation tools for interactive discussions and debate. Networking opportunities are found across every area of the platform. Visit one of the networking tables, set a table topic, and speak to your peers in a more informal environment. Once you have made a connection, video call and direct message them at any time during the event day for private and secure one-to-one conversation. Visit the expo for industry insights, support and services. Speak to solution providers live and check out their demo rooms for a more in-depth look at their offering. If you did miss anything during the event, log back in and watch content later on demand. Download the materials you gathered during the event via your delegate bag and make long-lasting connections with your peers. We look forward to welcoming you to the event. Know more, do more, be more. Informa Connect.
Hi, my name's Dave Ulrich. What a privilege to spend a few minutes with you and share with you an idea about what are some strategies L&D can use to drive value in an ever-changing work environment. I'm going to spend a few minutes today introducing some ideas that are going to be shared at the L&D Summit in Abu Dhabi in May. And let me talk about those ideas around a very simple question. How much value does L&D add to my company? 0 to 10. And then what can I do, or what can we do overall to add more value? What I want to do in this session is give you an introduction to that and a little bit of a teaser so that in May we can dive into it in the masterclass in the session in Abu Dhabi. So I'm going to give you some ideas that I hope have impact. Let me start with an idea. Now is the time. Why does L&D matter now? And then very quickly show L&D delivers value not only to our people, to our organization, but especially to our leadership. And then in purple will be my teaser. In May, I'm going to go into great detail about 10 trends in L&D and how to upgrade your efforts. But today we're going to talk about why that session is worth attending. In almost any study done, that's not studies, in almost any experience where senior business leaders come together, these are the topics people are talking about. You can pick any number. Number one, in studies of CEOs, the economic uncertainty, technology, and people are the dominant issues. Economic uncertainty, we're going to have inflation, deflation. Are we going to have new changes in the world? What are they going to be? Oh, technology, AI is changing the world, and people. All three of those are getting about equal attention. Conference topics: agility, culture, hybrid, government reporting. The government in the United States has required reporting called human capital. So the companies have to report their management of people and organizations, boards, and tangible value. 80% of market value of companies today, or the cost of capital, the debt, is tied to what's called intangibles. And a large part of that is organization and people. ESG, social attention, employees, all of these issues suggest more attention than ever is being paid to the people and organization than leadership that L&D affects. So here's the evolution, not only of L&D, but of HR in general. The field was focused on personnel in gray, terms and conditions of word. Then it's focused in green on human resources, the practices of L&D, who gets trained, how we trained, where we trained. In blue on human capital, on the outcomes of L&D and human resources. Now the yellow column, because of all of these things going on in the world, technology, uncertainty, demographics, political unrest, etc., agility, culture, human capability begins to be critical. And human capability has two dimensions that become relevant if I'm in L&D or in HR or a business leader. The first is we have to think outside in. It's not what we do, it's what people get because of what we do. And second, we need to not just deliver in blue human capital or great people who go through our training, but we need to deliver leadership and organization. So that yellow column defines the evolution of our field. We still have to do terms and conditions of work in gray. They're eventually there. They're always there. We have to do in green the delivery of our practices. We have to make sure things go well. In blue, we have to align them with our strategy. And now in black, in that yellow column, we have to go outside in and build human capability. Let me test that. Again, answer this to yourself. If you're at the session in May, I'll probably ask it again and we'll see how you do. What's the most important thing that we in L&D or HR or a business leader can give an employee? 1, a feeling of physical and psychological safety. 2, a sense of belief, meaning, purpose. 3, become better. 4, belong, community. 5, all the above. Or 6, none of the above. You know, I've asked that question over the last few years in a lot of different settings. The answer I get over and over and over again, if I'm training in L&D, if I'm designing programs, if I'm in HR, is 5. We should give them all the above. I disagree. This is the logic at the top of that pyramid. Our job in human capability is to create market value outside in. And so the correct answer is 6, none of the above. What's the most important thing we can give an employee who attends the L&D program? A company that succeeds in the marketplace. If we don't succeed in the marketplace, there is no workplace. Let me say that again. If we don't succeed in the marketplace, there is no workplace. I was doing a talk recently at a large technology company, and I was kind of intimidated, and there were 100 people of the senior leaders there, almost all of them PhDs in physics, chemistry, science. I thought, what am I going to say to these very, very bright people? How do I get their attention? And so I said, what do these companies have in common? It happened to be in America. Digital Equipment, Compaq, Toys R Us, Sears, Eastman Kodak. And I listed a bunch of companies. One of the colleagues in the group yelled out, they all went broke. And I yelled back at him, I consulted for every one of them. Now, if you're listening, I hope you get a little bit of a sense of laugh as I try to get in them. And they said, oh, that's kind of funny. So why are you here? And I said, well, you have 100,000 employees in a year. Maybe I can help you go broke too. And I said, no, that's not the goal. The goal is to learn from what I did. All of those companies did number 1 through 4. They had psychological, physical safety, meaning, purpose, but it become, belong. But they didn't connect what they did to the marketplace. Eastman Kodak had a 3-foot piece of plastic. They sold as film. The marketplace changed. Toys R Us had great locations selling toys, but they didn't adapt to the marketplace. An organization has to succeed in the marketplace. That's my premise. If you're in L&D, I want you to get your assumption that what we do enables my company to succeed in the marketplace. And so the old logic is our people are our most important asset. If you haven't heard that, you don't belong in L&D. You almost don't belong alive. Now you do belong alive. That's a bad joke. But it's not where I want to go. Our people, those we train, those we develop, those we nurture, are our customers' most important asset. When everything we do is about that North Star of the customer, of helping him or her get their goals met, we're going to be more successful. So one of the questions I'd love to ask, and again, I may ask it when we're together in May, what's the biggest challenge in your job today? Doing L&D work or human resource work well? Don't name a person, that wouldn't be appropriate. But my challenge is impact of training. My challenge is using new training methods. My challenge is combining with AI. Put behind whatever you're wrestling with the 2 words, so that. So that. Am I struggling with the administrative part of my job? Efficiency, the best practices, the HR strategy, connecting them to the business. When I put so that behind it, I'm struggling with the application issues. I just saw some work by a consulting firm that said only 2 to 4% of what people learn in training is applied. Wow, that's a struggle. So that we have better functional expertise, we apply our training, so that we deliver strategy, so that we succeed with customers in the marketplace. My first mental model for you is when we think about L&D in the right-hand column, we create value in the marketplace because of the work that we do. Think of a customer of your company, not an employee, but a customer who buys products or services, or an investor, or the community where you live and work. How will what we do in L&D be a benefit to them? And number 2, we deliver organization and leadership. Human capability is a broad term. I've used it. Today, that field is piecemeal with enormous number of ideas, not only in training, but in compensation and retention and employee experience and hybrid work and organization design. We believe there's 4 fundamental things that the management of organization and people needs to be able to do. In red, my fingers, is talent. We manage our people. We manage our talent. We manage them well. In blue is organization. We manage our workplace, our culture, our capability. And in dark blue, we manage our leadership. And the human resource effectiveness work, not only learning and development, but compensation, organization design, staffing, etc., all are designed to give tools that enable talent, organization, and leadership. In our world today, we have found that there are 38 initiatives in those 4 pathways. Ooh, that's a lot. These are all the things the human resource work is about today. Building talent through acquiring talent, developing employees, critical, that's what we do. In red, and leadership, clarifying the business case, training leaders. In light blue, getting the right culture, collaboration, expanding innovation. And then in purple are the things the HR function does to make it happen. Our research shows that when organizations do those 4 pathways, talent, leadership, and organization, and the 38 initiatives well, we get incredible results. This is some of the research that's very exciting. We downloaded 7,000 public reports in the United States, Securities Exchange Commission. We use machine learning with Amazon to extract how much did companies do these 38 areas. We then regressed those and correlated those with, in the dark blue, revenue per employee. 45%. Tobin Skew, confidence in the future. EBITDA, cash flow, social responsibility. Companies that do human capability succeed. Now, why do I go through that? L&D begins to be the anchor of that work. Now, look at those areas. We've got talent, managing people in red, getting better people, skills, abilities, right system, organization, building the right culture, leadership, in yellow now, highlighted, making sure our company has the right and best leaders. And finally, in purple, instead of the HR function, we focus on L&D. The L&D function, when it's done well, can build talent, leadership, and organization. And what I'm going to focus on is organization. I see a typing mistake in that, but that's okay. We're going to get the typing mistakes done in May, and we're going to show you how L&D can overcome organization. So let me tell you my message. How can L&D create more value? What are some specific strategies to do that? Not only for the employees who attend, for the business leaders, that's talent, for the organization, but especially for leadership. And having done that, this is now my teaser. When we get together in May, we're going to talk through 10 specific trends where L&D can make a difference. These are very exciting. And let me just highlight them. When we're together, we're going to have a master class and we're going to go into detail. You're going to leave with an action and a diagnostic and an action that you can do out of these 10. Number one, we have to create stakeholder value for others. That's what I've just talked about. Customers, investors, communities, employees, business leaders. How does every stakeholder participate in the value of L&D? We've got to enable agility and change. Our learning and development program should change as fast as our market changes. We have to learn everywhere. L&D is not just training, it's on the job, it's life experiences. How do I in L&D build a complete learning menu? We got to get a broad mix. Number 4, participation. Who teaches? Who attends? One of the action items, customers, investors should be teaching. Number 5, we've got to impact competence. Not only leadership, because we're going to go after that in detail, but talent, that's the individual and organization. We're going to show how L&D can build talent, leadership, and organization. 6, we've got to focus on solutions. Learning is not just about an idea or an action learning, it's about a solution. We don't want to focus on benchmarking. We want to focus on serving and creating value. Number 7, we got to transfer ideas from one setting to another. How do I increase that 4 to 5% of application? 8, we got to use technology. AI is rampant. It's everywhere. Rather than hide from it, use it. 9, we've got to measure the results of learning and development. Not just knowledge, not just behavior, not just business, but customer share, investor confidence. And finally, we'll talk about who does this. L&D people, HR people, line managers. That is a full agenda. So my message today is very simple. How can L&D create more value? We started with a little score. I'm going to give you a sense. Now is the time. We should build a business case to our business leaders, to our board, to our investors, to our customers. L&D should be part of every business issue. We're going to focus how L&D really drives not just leadership, that's the heart, but talent and organization. And finally, we're going to identify, assess, and improve on 10 trends. With that in mind, I invite you to attend a session in May in Abu Dhabi. It's the L&D Summit in Abu Dhabi, sponsored by Informa Connect. The 4-day program is exciting. My session is on May 15th from 11 to 1. We're going to have strategies for L&D to drive value in an ever-changing work environment. We'll delve into the role of L&D, driving growth and adaptability. Why do we now do it? We'll redefine leadership competencies to embrace trends, and we'll give you those 10 insights. My dear friends, now is the time. Now is the time. What we do in L&D matters. It creates value for everyone. 2, it especially delivers leadership, but also talent, leadership, talent, and organization. And when we identify and assess and improve on those 10 trends, we make a difference. Please join me on May 15th to get a session where we can learn and do the things that make a difference. And I should just say, I've looked at the agenda for this program. It is amazing. This conference and exposition will give you skills, not just from me, but from so many. And Abu Dhabi is one of the gorgeous places in the world. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much. Hi, my name's Dave Ulrich. What a privilege for me in May to join you at the L&D Informa Connect Summit in Abu Dhabi. I've been a professional for over 40 years in this field, talking about how do you help companies succeed and grow in changing markets. In this event, we're going to have an exciting opportunity to look at what L&D can do to make a difference, not only for employees, leaders inside, but customers, investors, and communities. We're going to have a session where we talk about strategies to build L&D in a changing business world. You will walk away with 10 agendas and 10 items, each of which has a diagnostic and an action plan. Our tagline is very simple. We are going to tackle tomorrow together by making L&D have impact. We're going to help our workforce be ready for what the future holds. We're going to allow L&D to move us faster than the world around us. And mostly, we're going to run together into our future to navigate change by the L&D work we do. I look forward to seeing you in Abu Dhabi at the Informa Connect L&D conference on May 15th.
Suki. I'm the editor of the HR Observer. Today, I'm speaking with Erin Meyer, a professor of management practice in the Organizational Behavior Department at INSEAD, which is a school that I would love to join at some point. It's not a promotion, but Erin talks about cross-cultural management, organizational culture, intercultural negotiations. And Erin, welcome. It's very lovely.
Thank you, Amnia. So nice to be here with you. I mean, I just define culture very simply, that culture is the personality of a group. So like in the same way, Amnia, if I get to know you very well, then I can describe your individual personality. Like, I don't know, maybe you're outspoken and extroverted or whatever it might be, emotionally expressive. That we can also describe the culture of a group. And that could be the culture of a generation. It could be the culture of an organization. That's organizational culture. Sorry, the personality of generation or the personality of an organization. But I study the personality of nations. So the personality of countries and of world cultures, and how the personality of those different nations impacts us as individuals when we are raised in those environments, and then what happens when, of course, we are working with people who were raised in other parts of the world than we are.
Right. So why there is culture conflict? Why are there culture conflicts? Why couldn't just people be like, okay, I respect your identity, I respect my identity, we're good?
Yeah, well, I think that it's very complicated when we're working internationally to figure out what is cultural and what is personal. And, like you give a presentation to a group of people from another country and they respond in a way that surprises you. And then at the end of the meeting, how do you know? Like, how do you know, oh, was it because that guy is angry with me, or because that woman is difficult to work with? Or is there something about the way that I presented the material, or maybe about the way that I expressed myself that led to this type of reaction? Is there something cultural going on that I could be aware of in order to be more strategic or empathic? So I believe in our global world, it's really critical that we're able to figure out what is personal and what is cultural, and even more so in a place like the UAE. I mean, I think such a fascinating environment, because of course you've got people from all over the world who are there, like in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi, working together, but who have all been raised, well, not all, but largely been raised in other countries, which leads to a lot of this, like kind of trying to tease out what's the cultural and what's the personal. So my framework helps do that.
Right. I wanted to ask about that. How can they actually identify what is cultural and what is personal?
Yeah, so I have a framework that I call culture mapping, and that breaks culture down into 8 behavioral scales. So we look at things like, how do we build trust differently in different cultures, or how do we make decisions differently in different parts of the world? And then through about 180,000 interviews that we've conducted in about 64 countries, we have these countries that are positioned up and down the scales. So then you can map out one country or one culture up to another. So if you were working, for example, I don't know, across, like if you're French and you're working with someone from Brazil, then you can map out the cultural differences, and you can see, okay, well, like both cultures are relationship oriented, but Brazil much more relationship oriented than France. Or that when it comes to disagreement, that the Brazilian culture tends to not like to have like open disagreements. It's likely to really harm the relationship, versus in France, where if you have a really open disagreement in a meeting, it's likely to make us closer. That's the disagreeing scale. So the more that we understand those patterns and the more we study them, and that's what we're going to be talking about in my masterclass with you, the more we can become sophisticated at understanding how to analyze the cultural versus the personal.
But are all, I mean, you've met a lot of people. Is everyone really into understanding that this is actually culture, or the busy world of the business just doesn't give people the opportunity to actually want to understand?
Well, I think that successful global leaders do. I mean, it's been such an interesting thing that's happened to us since COVID, which is that before COVID, I do believe that a lot of the world was not really in touch with people from other countries. So perhaps this information was actually irrelevant to them, and that's fine. You know, if you are working with people who were raised in the same environment and the same society that you were, then you don't need to know. But now that we are, I think, largely working in these environments where we get up in the morning and maybe we open up some kind of virtual media and we see faces from people throughout the world who are right there on our computer screen. It's so easy to think to judge other people's behaviors from our own cultural lens, instead of recognizing, oh yeah, well, I think what he's trying to say is this, because I understand a little bit about the cultural background that he's coming from. So I do believe that this is becoming much, much more important and urgent for all of us to understand.
Right. And just to elaborate further on this, how do you think that different cultures can actually push businesses to grow at this moment in time?
Yeah, well, like, let me give you an example. Let's think about something very specific, very simple, like feedback. Okay, so of course, if we are in a management position, we have to give feedback to our employees and maybe even to our colleagues, give them advice and ideas about how to improve their work. The appropriate way to give that advice is very different from one country to another. So maybe I'll give you 3 examples. I mean, in the US, we are taught on the one hand to be explicit with the feedback. We're really a feedback culture. And I think because we're so explicit in the US, we're really like stereotyped in other countries as being very direct. But the American culture also teaches this giving 3 positives with every negative, catching people doing things right. So actually, Americans give more positive feedback and stronger positive feedback than any other culture in the world. And when they give negative feedback, they tend to wrap it with positive messages. Okay, in France. So I'm originally from the US, but I've lived in France for 20 years. In France, positive feedback usually goes unsaid. So if I don't say anything, you know you're doing great. Now, negative feedback, I may give a little bit more strongly, and I might give it with a little bit more passion. So then, like, I had a situation, I'm working with this French woman. She has an American boss. The American boss gives her feedback in the way we do in the US. This is great. This is fabulous. This needs to change. And she thinks, wow, that's the best performance review I've ever received. But she doesn't make any changes. Later on, he's really frustrated that she's not listening to him. I mean, that's critical. Now she's lost her face in her boss. Maybe she's even going to get fired. And then, of course, another method might be what we would find in less direct countries. So, for example, Thailand, where there may be a tendency to pass the negative between the lines. And we might do that by saying the good and leaving out the bad. So, for example, I was presenting at a conference in Bangkok, and the coordinator asked me to send her 2 photos and a video so she could present the conference, which I did. And then I called her up. Do you have what you need? She said, the photos were excellent. Thank you. So then I said, oh, well, would you like me to send you another video? And she said, well, if you have one, that would be wonderful. You see how she was able to give me that message without her ever saying I didn't like the video. Right. So I do believe it's so critical in any work environment that we're able to understand these patterns and adapt our style so that we can both work more effectively with clients and suppliers and also motivate our employees to get things done in the way that is the most effective.
Right. And is there a magic formula, for example, to say this is going to be is the American way going to be working with these kind of employees or with these employees from this culture?
Yeah, well, wouldn't that be great? Like if there was one way that worked around the world, but maybe we would lose out on some of the interest of the whole thing. No, I think the magic formula is that we as leaders in organizations or as anybody who's working in an international situation, we need to be aware. We need to understand the differences in the way to give feedback and the way, and what about our own style is cultural, so that we can just make some simple little tweaks in order to be effective, not just tweaks in the way we deliver the information, but also tweaks in the way that we feel the information coming at us. Maybe I'll give you another example of this that comes up all the time, like who speaks in meetings and why. So I mean, I think anyone who's worked in a multicultural environment knows that some cultures talk a lot more than others do. And one example would be, okay, my own culture, the American culture, we are a very talkative people in a work environment. And that's largely linked to our education system, because in the US, we are taught in school to speak up. So, I mean, we have a participation grade in the US. And I learned as a child in Minnesota, where I was raised, I learned that I needed to have my hand almost raised even before I knew what the question was, because it didn't matter if what I said was right or wrong or thought through or stupid. Actually, what mattered was that I contributed. And of course, I learned that, like almost every American child, day in and day out in school. Now compare that to someone who's in Thailand, or someone who's in India or Saudi Arabia, where children are much more likely to learn, okay, I speak once I've thought through what I want to say, and I have something intelligent to contribute. And then or perhaps even when I'm called on. So now we've got these situations where some people are talking all the time and other people are waiting for an opportunity to speak that never comes. And of course, if we don't understand that, if we don't understand why different cultures speak up and why other cultures are quiet, and if we come from a more talkative culture, then we're likely to think, oh, well, those people didn't speak because they have nothing to say, which means that they don't have good leadership capacity or they don't support me. And if I come from a culture where we're more likely to listen carefully, think about what we want to say before we talk, then we may feel that those people from those talkative cultures, that they are show-offs, that they're selfish, and certainly they've got poor leadership capacity. So
Right.
again, a very simple example of how cultural differences may play out, I think, every day in our multicultural world. And if we're aware of those, we can think about like what strategies can we use in order to get that balanced participation and hear that voice of diversity.
I mean, now I'm going to be very cautious about my meetings. Now that I was reflecting on that, I was like, do I talk a lot or talk less? And I certainly talk a lot. How about technology? So one of the main aspects of talks now when it comes to culture is that technology is changing culture, or it's, lingering the lines between that. You'd imagine someone working in a multinational company is aware that there are different cultures, that people come from different backgrounds, don't take things personally. But I don't know if that is the case. So where does, going on a Zoom call or, messaging people quickly play a role in actually blurring the lines further?
Yeah, well, I think that it's made the world really, really complicated, because it used to be that most people who had international exposure were traveling to other countries, or maybe like in the UAE, actually moving to those other countries. And of course, when we travel somewhere, we have a lot of visual cues that help us to understand the context so we can figure out what's cultural and what's personal. Like a very simple example of that would be like, let's say you go to India, and when you're in India, maybe you're in Southern India, and you see, oh, like everyone's kind of doing this thing with their head, like moving their head, not just up and down or back and forth, but ear to ear, shoulder to shoulder, while they're listening to me. So I get, okay, that's a cultural signal. People are listening to me. But now I'm on a Zoom call and I've got just one colleague from India. So that person starts doing that. Now I have communication without context. I mean, I don't have the context to help me figure out what's cultural. So I assume it's all personal. And now I read that person's body language as it would mean something in my own culture. That guy disagrees with me, or he's not certain that what I said is thought through. So I do believe it's made things much more, let's say, complicated or interesting. And it also means that we have to be much more thoughtful about understanding these differences, because we don't often have the cultural cues as to what everybody's doing to tease out the cultural versus the personal.
Right. That makes your role a little bit more complicated as well, because correct me if I'm wrong, the world is a really complex place, and being thoughtful in a complex place is actually not that easy. So how do you advise businesses to just understand people and be people?
Yeah, well, of course it's not easy, but human behavior, people leadership is not simple. It's but we can of course break it down, and we can make it easier. Let me just give you like a very simple example of this. So you are in Dubai. I was working with an Emirati organization a while ago, and one of the Emirati managers came up to me during a break, and he told me this story. He said, I have an American boss, and in my culture, culture, right? Like in the Emirati culture, if we have a discussion on the telephone and we make some decisions verbally, that would be enough for me, especially if we have a little bit of a relationship. And then if you get off of the phone and you put into writing everything we've decided, and you send that written recap to me, that would be like a signal to me that you don't trust me. And he said, but my American boss, he's sending me every time we have a telephone call, he sends me a recap. So I was taking that really poorly, like as a really like a signal, my boss doesn't trust me. And then finally he said, okay, so finally I sat, I just like got the courage together, and I asked for a meeting, and I said to him, like, I get it. Like, you don't trust me. This is what's happening. And he said, and my boss was like totally surprised. He said, no. In the US, we do that all the time. It's just considered being a good communicator. And I think, that just shows that, of course, human behaviors are complicated, but the more that we understand why people that we're working with act the way they do or have different reactions, the more we can find simple solutions. And with this case, okay, like once we understand it, no big deal, right? I mean, the Emirati guy, he can get, oh, I see, I'm having a cultural reaction, but it's actually not reflective of my actual worry. And the boss also now aware, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that in the future. Now I know if I'm working with clients or with employees from Emirati or from the UAE, that maybe I should be more thoughtful and not just put everything in writing as standard procedure. So a little bit of awareness can help us simplify things a lot and know what to do.
Right. That's a lot of things to think about. Erin, I would love to meet you in person once you're here, but I would like to end this conversation by just asking you, do you have quick tips on how to understand cultures when you have not been exposed to so many of them?
Yeah, so what we're going to do in our session together in May is we're going to go through this kind of culture mapping methodology, and we'll explore how do we communicate effectively in different cultures, how do we give feedback effectively, how do we build trust, what does a good leader look like in different environments. I'll give you a quick example of that one. So I've been working with this Dutch company. So the Netherlands is one of the most egalitarian countries in the world. So they really believe in the Netherlands, like the best boss is like a facilitator among equals, right? Like just the best CEO, just 2 small steps up from the janitor, right? So the best boss is someone who really pushes decision-making down in the organization and acts like he's just or she's just one of the crowd. So I had this guy from Mexico who was now managing a team in the Netherlands. He said to me, oh my gosh, managing Dutch people is absolutely incredible because they don't care at all that I'm the boss. So I go into these meetings, I'm trying to roll out my strategy, and people are challenging me and contradicting me and taking my ideas off in other directions. Sometimes I just want to get down on my knees and plead with them, please don't forget that I'm in charge. Okay, so that's one of the dimensions that we're going to look at, how to lead effectively in different environments, how to make decisions effectively. And we're also going to look at some things that are quite a bit more in depth, like how we're actually trained to analyze differently in different school systems in the world, and how that may lead us to both give presentations in different formats and to be more try to influence more effectively. So we'll do that, and I'll give the group my link to my culture mapping tool at the end of it, so they can click on whatever countries they're working with, see them mapped out, and we'll also do a personal assessment so everyone can respond to some questions about themselves, get their personal map, which they can then compare to various country maps, find out if you are living in the right country or not. Very important moment for everybody.
Thank you very much, Erin. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Loved talking to you, to be honest.
Thank you, Omnia. Such a pleasure. Looking forward to joining you all in the UAE in just a couple of months. Hello, my name is Erin Meyer. I am a professor at INSEAD, and I study how cultural differences impact our effectiveness when we are working in complex, multicultural, virtual situations. I am the author of the best-selling book, The Culture Map, and also of the New York Times best-selling book, No Rules Rules. I am very much looking forward to coming to Abu Dhabi in May 2024 for the region's largest and most prestigious L&D summits. On May 13th, I will be leading a master's class on how to improve our effectiveness with what I call culture mapping. Culture mapping is a set of cultural dimensions that helps us to analyze how we make decisions differently in different cultures, how we build trust differently in different parts of the world, how we give feedback in the way that is most constructive in different world regions. And then we will think about how each of us can be more effective working in these complex multicultural situations, given the fact that we may be negotiating deals or leading teams or working with clients from all over the world. I'm particularly looking forward to running this in Abu Dhabi, as the UAE is, of course, one of the most multicultural settings one could find themselves in. Please join me on May 13th. I very much look forward to seeing you there.
What if you and your team can be even more informed, competitive, accomplished, even more successful, with programs designed to inspire and empower everyone to become even more? Introducing Informa Connect Academy. With hundreds of global, digital, and in-person training courses led by world-renowned industry experts, reimagining learning experiences for even more unlocked potential. Informa Connect Academy, available at informaconnect.com/academy.
Hello, this is Omni Al-Dasuki. I'm the editor of the HR Observer, talking to Jamal Qureshi, a keynote speaker and a leading performance psychologist. Jamal is a renowned performance psychologist and motivational speaker, known for his work with athletes, business leaders, and teams. Jamil, I want to start by asking you, how did you even go into your career as a performance psychologist and motivational speaker? What drove you to that part of the world?
You started with the toughest question, haven't you? I don't know, really, to be honest. I can't really answer it. I just found myself doing it. I always had an interest in psychology. My original degree was in business and marketing. So I started in business and marketing, but always had an interest in psychology. And then one day decided that I should do psychology. And I started to chase my passion more than my pension. And it sort of, I ended up being here. I think what happened was that I was doing lots of work with very good sports people. So, some of the best sports people in the world. And then sports is very closely linked at a high level to business. So I would have been somewhere in Germany working with golfers at a golf tournament, and someone from BMW who sponsored the golf tournament would say, if you're working with these golfers, can you come and talk to my sales team? And so I probably would have said yes, and then gone and done it. And then people in the audience go and tell their wives or husbands or, whoever. And so you end up doing a talk at their company. And then, before I knew it, I looked in my diary and I was talking about my work more than I was doing it. So, I turned around one day and I was a guest speaker. So I really talk now more than anything else. So that's where you'll find me most days, is doing a talk to an audience.
So the reason why I started with that question is because there was a change in your life, right? So how did you get into this change? How did you accept change?
Yeah, I think for me, I think that it's always about reimagination, reinvention. repurposing, and genuinely following something that you are engaged and enthused about. So I think when you're enthusiastic about something, it's easier to learn it. You talk more excitedly about it. You want to share it. So I think that what happened for me was that I genuinely found something which made me feel purposeful. I really enjoyed the idea of psychology. I enjoyed the idea of finding out what people do and then helping them to do it better. So I think everyone can be better, and it's just a matter of trying to create a mindset or attitude which optimizes our potential. So I think I had so much personal interest in it. I didn't necessarily see it as change. I saw it as bringing to front of mind what I was already interested in. So it probably wasn't that I turned in a different direction. I probably allowed what I was interested in to become more exaggerated. I turned the volume up on it. It became more of me, than just an underlying interest.
Right. But then that requires breaking some mental barriers, right? That just doesn't happen like this. So how do you overcome such mental barriers? And since we're talking about your experience now, I also want to move into the experiences of others. How do you help others to overcome their mental barriers to change?
Yeah, so I think that there's a few things on that one. How do we change people's thinking? How do we change our own? I think that perspectives are very important. How we see things, and there's a variety of ways in which we can see things. So let's consider all options. Let's look at all perspectives. And I think that in business, in life, we probably don't give ourselves enough perspectives, and we don't give other people enough perspectives. And often when I work with golfers, for example, or other sports people, Formula One, Premiership football, they're really talented. They're really, really good. It's really a matter of allowing them to create a new perspective, a new way of seeing life, their sport, themselves, to allow them to use their skills in a better way. So it's not necessarily upskilling people, it's changing the way in which they view things, which change the way in which they do things. So I think there's a big difference between commitment and compliance, getting people to commit to change rather than tell them to change. And I think the best ways to get people to commit to change is for them to co-author and co-create that change. So rather telling people to be different, engage in conversation, allow them to unravel some of their own barriers and inhibitors, allow them to allow new opportunity to reveal itself to them. And so co-authoring and co-creating works very well. People support what they help to create. It's an important change principle. It's an important leadership principle, an important sales principle at the moment, actually. So, people support what they help to create. The best way to get someone to accept an idea is for them to believe it was their own. So, the more conversations that we can have, which allow people to see things differently, choose different routes, understand these new outcomes can be achieved by looking in different directions, the better. I think it's an essential part of coaching as well as leadership is, not to tell people what to see, but maybe where to look, to allow them to have the experience of discovery. So, I think it's all about changing perspectives, which allow people maybe to move past these barriers because they don't even see them as that.
That's not easy, right? Like, it's not easy, specifically in your line of work. You work with high-level athletes, and just the idea is to make them get over perhaps their ego or whatever is holding them from change. That's not easy. How do you do that?
Oh, it's not easy. No, not at all. So I think that I think the tailors who make clothes, they say measure twice, cut once. And I think that it's good advice. But the more conversation you can have, the more listening you can have, the more understanding you can have, the better your chance of moving in the right direction in the first instance. So you don't necessarily need to readjust. So, I think that good conversations are key. I think allowing people to understand what they're seeking to achieve and create. Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? What does long-term success look like? So allowing people to build a vision and tell a story about what success looks like. Right. I think for people to break it down into component parts is a really important thing. So all great achievements are the result of many small achievements. So,
Right.
how do we break this down? And I think it's important to celebrate successes, no matter how small, so people understand that they're moving in the right direction. And I think it's really important to tell stories. So, and I don't think we tell enough stories in life. We certainly don't tell enough stories in business. So, I think stories really allow people to gain a three-dimensional picture and an emotional connection between where they are and where they want to be. So, in business, we, win a big contract, or we want to put in place a strategy or a plan or a culture change program. We give people numbers, and we give people graphs, charts. We tell them what it looks like, but we don't tell a story. We don't share a vision. We don't give a little bit of ourselves away. We don't create a picture which allows people to fully engage with their hearts as well as their minds. So, not if you, for example, if an alien came down to this earth and you had to tell the alien all about the planet and all about, being human, but you weren't allowed to tell them a story. You give them graphs and charts and data, statistics, they wouldn't know what it's like to be human. So, not every tribe or civilization on this planet uses the wheel. Every single one uses storytelling. And there are Aboriginal tribes who measure the strengths of a tribe on how many stories are told. So, I think that once you start to engage people in a more three-dimensional and emotional way, allow them to catch a feeling, as much as a plan, understand the plan,
Right.
then I think it's a really interesting way to inspire people and motivate people, into understanding why change, is good, or how to make it, or what it can result in.
Right. And then let's say they have changed, they have succeeded, or they have reached a peak performance, etc. Can you share some of the strategies or principles that you actually use to make sure that they are on the path all the time, or at least most of the time?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, isn't it? Because I think it's really hard to get to number one in the world, but I think it's even harder to stay there. And I think the best way to remain number one is to keep imagining you're number two. So, and this is where reinvention, reimagination comes in. If better never stops, then continuous improvement should be part of our strategy. And I think that those who experiment the most win consistently. I think it's true. It's always better to be disrupted from the inside than from the outside. So many organizations found that out a few years ago. The pace of change internally must match the pace of change externally, if you're a key sports person or if you're a business. So, things are changing all the time, inside and outside. So therefore, success is a game of continual adjustment. So it's not about understanding what's allowing us to be successful and continuing to do it necessarily. It's about understanding what's allowing us to be successful, and so therefore what we need to give up to allow us to have further success. And that's a particular mindset, which very few people have, to be honest. It's very hard in business or very hard in sport to give up what's allowing you to be successful to allow you to be successful. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? So I think that the best players who stay number one, the best businesses that stay number one, go through this continual improvement by having good levels of curiosity, good levels of challenge, the ability to unlearn, to take apart what we believe is true, and then question it, and the ability to become purposeful. And I'll just explain a little bit about that if I can, but I won't take too long explaining it.
That's fine.
It's an important point. So, I think objectives and targets will make you successful. I think they're really useful. But purpose is different. Purpose is a reason for being, a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And this is why in sport, you don't really beat people with purpose. So purpose is never achieved. It's attained on a daily basis. And this is what allows Tiger Woods to keep on playing. It's what allows Warren Buffett to keep on working. It's because purpose is never achieved. It's attained on a daily basis. That's why we turn up every day. And I think that, these people who are consistently successful understand what it's like to be purposeful. And in business, purpose maximization at the moment is definitely driving profit maximization.
Right.
I think that passion is a significant multiplier of human performance. There's all these companies with mission statements, but very few on a mission. Truly galvanizing their people behind a worthy cause. And I think that those who do really well in business, those who do really well in sport, are incredibly purposeful.
Right. So while you're talking now, I was just thinking about purpose, passion, and the fact and the link between these two and unlearning stuff. And this is going to be my last question. But I really want to understand, how does unlearning actually help in creating more purpose and more passion towards achieving something out of our lives?
Yeah, okay. You asked really difficult questions today. You said you're going to ask easy questions. That's what you said at the beginning. So I think it's no longer about time management. I think it's about energy management. It's about managing our energy into a space where we create most impact and most value. First things first, second things never. If everything is important, nothing is. So I think that once we start to unlearn, we question what we believe to be true. We question the world around us. We all have a viewpoint of customers. We have a viewpoint of the market. We have a viewpoint of competition, our products, our services. Once we start to question these things and whether they're still true, whether what we believe about them is still right, because the world is changing so fast, I think we start to direct our energy into a new space. So we can become more purposeful by narrowing our focus on the things that really matter. And in a way, that unlearning bit, the link between unlearning and purpose, is perhaps to move away from some of the distractions. Some of the areas where, we believe it's activity, we believe it's productivity, when really it's just activity. So once we start to unlearn by, understanding the world better, by good questioning and curiosity and some self-challenge, as well as challenge of those around us, then maybe we could become more purposeful, because we start to see, where our true impact, really lies.
Right. Well, Jamil, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to meeting
Thank
you.
you. I'm Jamil Qureshi, and I'm a performance coach and psychologist. I'm looking forward to seeing you on May the 14th in Abu Dhabi. The learning and development professionals and leaders from the region. I believe it's your first summit of this nature and size, so I'm really looking forward to being there. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm going to be talking about how we can change people's minds, how we can get people to think differently, to do differently, how we can get people, including ourselves, to commit to new thinking to allow us to optimize potential and make the most of the human capital that we have to hand. I'm going to look forward to seeing you. I'll pack my suitcase and I'll be with you on May the 14th. Thank you.